Thanks for clicking on to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. This may be a little bit of a lengthy video today, so bear with me. I want to look a little bit with regards to the winter and what's happening with regards to why the weather pattern has taken a fairly significant shift towards warm, wet domination. North America, but more so even western portions of Europe here. It looked as if during the month of December through the month of January, things were playing out pretty darn well. We've seen Stratwarmans, we've seen the MJO in favourable phases. Then we've seen it rotate into phases 4 and 5, which is warm phases. That then correlated quite nicely with the overall pattern across the hemisphere as well as locally. But then we took this sudden, well, what appears to be a sudden dramatic shift away from the teleconnections of the MJO and Stratwarman, etc., etc. Maybe I was being fooled in the first place with regards to these teleconnections, and maybe it wasn't the case, and I was maybe lucky. I don't know. But in today's video, I want to look at a little bit of the evidence to back up what I said before, what's been taking place, and where I think we may be going down the road as we move towards the month of March, because it's we have to hold our hands up and say that the last 30 or so days has been dominated by warmth, not just here across UK, Ireland, and Europe, but across the majority of the planet, northern hemisphere to be exact. And we know the areas around the world that has been warmer than average this year so far. Listen, before I continue with the video, I want to apologize slightly. The videos the last couple of days, the quality has been a little bit disappointing to say the least. I was rushing the past couple of days, and what has been taking place is I've been kind of doing late videos, then rushing out the door to head out to work because I do night shift, as many of you already know. But I noticed the video the day before last, the screen quality was poor. The screen was smaller than it should have been. I was way up in the corner. Then in yesterday's video, um, my ugly mug was bang slap in the middle of the screen, which I don't know why that was the case. But I suppose when you're recording a video, not checking the quality, and then hitting the upload button before rushing out the door, that's what takes place. So hopefully, I've got more time on my hands today, so hopefully I'll be able to check quality before I upload the video. But I do apologize for these little blips. I'm very, very poor when it comes to technology, IT. I'm hopeless. A lot of the time, I have to actually watch YouTube videos to try and learn stuff and how to do things. It frustrates the life out of me, and I'm working very, very hard at the moment to improve the quality of these videos, to improve the content, including live streams like was produced in probably a pretty bad way on Sunday, may I add. But nonetheless, it's steps forward, and sometimes you have to take steps back on that step forward process. But nonetheless, I'm working on this. Bear with me. And if you're enjoying the content and you have not already done so, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I do greatly appreciate your support. So what's going on? We had what appeared to be an okay winter. I appreciate the fact that folks in the southern half of the British Isles have probably said this has been a rubbish winter. But I'm going to show you exactly where we have been, where we are at the moment, and where we're going down the road here. Now, if we look at this article that was produced by myself for the month of February, this is the February Outlook, and I'll look back a little bit at where we've been so far. Now, when it comes to weather, our memories can be a little bit foggy. It's easy to start forgetting what has happened before when you're in the moment. When you've got warm domination, or you've even got cold domination, which doesn't seem to feel like it happens all that often these days. But when you've got a dominant warm pattern for a prolonged period of time, sometimes it's easy to forget that we have seen spells of cold this winter up until now here. But like I said, the warmth has really taken over the entire pattern, and I'm going to try and show you why I think that has been the case, because when I do score a forecast correctly, I'm still analysing what was said, how I got to that forecast, and how I can learn as I go down the road here. Now, the fact that the weather pattern has taken a change to the slightly unexpected, and I say the word slightly because I did have in the winter forecast in the bottom of the article, if you read it back, the winter forecast, I did say that I had concerns about a delayed response from the strong to borderline super El Nino. Now, there is people out there that will argue that it was never a super El Nino. I have to say that this was very close to a super El Nino. And what was the confusing aspect was the fact that the atmosphere, whether it be the SOI, the Southern Oscillation Index, or the MEI, which is the Multivariant Enso Index, that is what is important when it comes to the atmospheric response to the oceans. So the oceans were cooking. There's no getting away from that. We had +2 Celsius above average, which is a very strong, possibly not necessarily a super, but a very strong El Nino in both the key regions of the equatorial Pacific. In other words, the central as well as the eastern portion of the Pacific. Now, the key thing about all this is that the SOI and the MEI were reflecting more of a La Nina as opposed to an El Nino pattern. Now, the reason why I was concerned that the El Nino could kick in and overwhelm the pattern, which essentially it has, is the fact that I thought, do we see a delayed response between the ocean and atmosphere? Now, if we look at the SOI over the, so this is me trying to find out where the pattern has changed. Why has the MJO, the stratospheric warmings. Remember, we've had 3 strong stratospheric warmings with arguably 2 reversals, which is 2, by definition, 2 major sudden stratospheric warmings. But yet, the warmth is overwhelming the pattern. Why is that the case? Well, if you look at the SOI for the last 30 days, it is at minus 19.19. Now, the thing to remember about this is the deeper the negative, the more the El Nino is in an El Nino base state. It's reflecting an El Nino type pattern. So the last 30 days, it is at the most El Nino esque response from ocean to the atmosphere that we've had the entire winter season. I personally believe that that could be a large contributing factor to what is overwhelming the pattern, similar to what we've seen back in 2015, 16, 1997, 1998. And I think if you look at what has taken place, we were cooking the tropical Pacific, especially against the South American coast, which is a bad omen for cold winters, may I add. But look at what's taken place here. If we look at the SOI over the last 90-day period, it is only at minus 5.13. And the daily contribution to the SOI calculation is at plus 6.10. Now, the atmosphere was not responding so much during the November and December period. You can see that here. This is the monthly average SOI value. So November was minus 8.38, sorry. December was minus 3.78, and January was plus 3.96. But in the last 30-day period, we've seen a tank to nearly minus 20. And I think what has taken place is, despite the MJO rotating into the colder phases, we went through those warm phases of 4 and 5 during December, and there was little telltale signs, by the way, even back in the autumn time, the tremendous amounts of rain that we were seeing, the strong jet stream, the negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation during the latter half of summer, mainly the NAO, in fact, as opposed to the AO. But that that was very, very negative. And with the Southern Oscillation Index and the MEI not responding to that super El Nino or strong El Nino surface temperature profile, I think that is what allowed spells of cold and blockiness to take place. Early December, then the pattern flipped on its head. Then the MJO rotated back into the cold phases. We had the mid January cold spell. But ever since that, I think the atmosphere, this is crucial, the atmosphere has then started to respond to those warm sea surface temperatures of +2 in both Nino region 3.4 and crucially 1.2 Celsius or 1.2 Nino region. So I think that the El Nino has finally kicked in and overwhelmed the MJO, even the stratospheric warmings. This has been a really weird winter when it comes to sudden stratospheric warming fighting. I think the stratospheric polar vortex has been in a different state to what we're seeing within the tropics. Does that make sense? We're having this battle between Arctic and equator, and I think the equatorial region of the planet is now uh, overwhelming the entire system, and that is what we're seeing taking place. Look at this here. So remember what we've seen with the stratospheric warming. Look at the Arctic oscillation, firmly positive. We took the dip briefly during the month of February here, but we didn't see a response. This is the second warmest February on record for the United States. The UK, even probably Ireland, most of Central Europe is running one of the warmest Februaries on record, and yet we've seen a dip in the Arctic oscillation. Look at it now, it's well back in the positive state once again. Look at the North Atlantic oscillation, it too is struggling to get even to neutral. You notice that here. Remember the dominance of the negative North Atlantic oscillation during the autumn season, even back during the summer season. I think it was the most negative NAO summer since 2009. Look at the dominance of the negative during the second half of the summer, then during the autumn season, and then even during the front half of the winter season. It was firmly dominated by a negative North Atlantic oscillation, and all of a sudden, we're now dominated by a positive. Why would that be the case? Well, if the El Nino is starting to kick in, that then has an impact on the jet stream. It starts to force a stronger jet stream, Pacific, North America, Atlantic into Europe here. Drives ocean air, warm ocean air across North America and across Europe here. So all of a sudden, other teleconnections are thrown out the window. Look at the rainfall, by the way, over the next couple of weeks here. This is all the way out to Friday the 8th of March. This is the total accumulated precipitation of the GFS. But one thing I want to point out to you is look at how the rainfall is displaced further south of the UK and Ireland here. So we are seeing more of a southward displacement of the jet. Now that may be to do with what's going on within the stratosphere with the warming that we're taking place. That strat warmings tend to favour, not necessarily guaranteed, but tends to favour enhanced blocking patterns and therefore a further displaced jet. We are going to see a ton of rain across the north of Iberia, where we could see the model actually prints out 448 millimeters of rain between now and the 8th of March along that north coast of Iberia here. Southern France is going to get a dousing. Unfortunately, for folks in Barcelona, the surrounding Catalonia region is not going to see this significant rainfall. Notice here how there's a real lack of rainfall, in fact, across northeastern Spain. Yet look further west and north of the Barcelona area, we are going to see a tremendous amount of rain. Also, we're going to see a tremendous amount of moisture along the southern flank of the Alps as well, parts of northern Italy. The western side of the UK and Ireland is susceptible to that jet stream of the Atlantic here. So look at how warm the Atlantic is also. This is playing a big role. I know this might be wrong. This is just my opinion. But look at how warm the tropical and subtropical Atlantic is. When you've got a displaced jet further south, you're then drawn and tapping that added fuel, enhanced fuel off those warm waters of the Atlantic. And that, folks, is playing a role as well. There's almost like an Atlantic version of of an El Nino on our side of the planet as well. So the El Nino was driving the jet stronger than average across the North Pacific into North America here. That is I think this is the SOI. This is the atmosphere now starting to respond to that El Nino. Let me know in the comments section below. Do you agree with what I'm saying, or am I barking up the wrong tree and talking nonsense? But this is just simply my opinion. That warm water has now started to activate the atmosphere. We've seen it with during the month of January. This was the first telltale signs of El Nino really kicking in. Look at the atmospheric river. Look at the record or near record breaking rainfall across the western side of North America, driving a super warm December, a warmer than average January. But we did see the Arctic spell during the middle portions of January. And then look at what we've got now. One of the warmest Februaries on record across North America. But the jet stream is really kicking in. Also, we're seeing the same thing taking place across the Atlantic. But with that jet crossing the Atlantic, very, very warm waters, record-breaking warm waters within the tropical and subtropical Atlantic, that is driving tremendous amounts of rainfall. Did you know? You probably do if you watch the tremendous Met Office deep dive released every Tuesday, and they were talking about how there's parts of England that through the first 19 days of February has seen twice the average rainfall for the month of February. And this is all, I think anyway, down to that tanking of the SOI and the overwhelming El Nino response. But like I said, this has been a really strange winter because we've had these stratospheric warmings taking place here. We've had other aspects as well. I want to look into stuff with regards to the exceptional fluctuations in temperature over Asia. Outstanding warmth dominating the Asian continent here. We've also had colder, so winter trying to fight back. If we look at this particular chart here of, let me just bear with me a wee second here. Sorry, I've kind of lost my place, unfortunately, here. But like I said, I'm kind of going back and forth, and I'm sorry about that. I'm just there's a lot of things kind of floating around in my head at the moment. But look at how strong the MJO was in phases 4 and 5. Then it went into the favourable phases for cold, for blocking. But the atmosphere has simply not responded to that. That is why I think the El Nino has taken over the pattern and overwhelmed it. Now you notice here that it's drifting into phases 3. Went into the null phase and into phases 3. Does it creep back into phases 4 and 5, warm phases? We don't know that. And this is the competing aspect as well. We've got the El Nino, we've got the possible borderline warm phases of the MJO. However, we've just seen a stratospheric warming take place, and it looks as if we're going to see an early stratospheric warming final stratospheric warming taking place early March. What impacts does that have? Now, history tells you that you have enhanced blocking with a particularly early sudden stratospheric, final sudden stratospheric warming. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. But this is a very, very fascinating but complicated situation here. I'm going to try and get back to what I was trying to show you a second ago here. Yeah, this is what I was wanting to show. Notice here, this is the vertical velocity chart here of the GFS. This is a global view, and if I can try and blow this up, it'll make it a little bit easier for you to see. But all the sinking motion has been enhancing the heat across parts of Australia. You would typically expect that. It's Australian latter half Australian summer, so you typically see 45 to 50 degrees Celsius heat across the deserts of Australia. But we've also seen tremendous amounts of heat across Indonesia, up into Thailand, Cambodia. We've had record after record heat being broken here. Now that has been a lot to do with the strong positive Indian Ocean dipole, which enhances sinking over the eastern Indian Ocean basin. Australia the maritime continent, which is Indonesia, and up into southeastern Asia. Now, we've seen for week after week tremendous amounts of heat across this southern region of Asia. We've also seen tremendous amounts of heat up across Japan, into the Koreas, in the eastern portions of China. But incidentally, we've also seen some amazing cold spells, and I showed you that in recent videos. The contrast of 90 degrees Celsius on one day in China between minus 52.3 and 38 Celsius, plus 38 Celsius. That is one of the biggest contrasts you'll ever see on the face of the planet in a single country. What impact, this is the thing that I'm asking, is what impact is that having on the atmosphere, these big collisions in air mass? If we look at the temperature anomaly chart here, you can see the amazing contrast, the collision between warm and cold. So look at the tremendous warmth over eastern China, record-breaking monthly temperatures here. Look at across Mongolia, Kazakhstan, southern Russia, bitterly cold polar air. That is then getting driven southwards, wiping out that heat, massive drop in temperature. And I think what's taking place is this is helping contribute to these troposphere to stratospheric warming situations through the last couple of months. Remember, this has been a really bizarre winter where we've had 3 strong strat warmings taking place, but yet the second and even third strat warming has not responded to the atmosphere, and I think it's because of the El Nino. But this incredible contrast in heat across Central and Eastern Asia, I think, is propagating up through the troposphere and affecting the stratosphere. And I also think that the level of warmth that we've got within the mid latitudes of the planet is then expanding the depth of the troposphere and in turn affecting the stratosphere by forcing warming to take place within particularly the lower stratosphere. A lot of these stratospheric warmings, by the way, have came from uh, Asia and moved across towards the pole here. And I think it's because of the level of warmth that we're seeing over the Eurasian continent. I could be wrong with that, and I would be interested to hear your opinion on what I'm talking about. But this is fascinating times, folks. It's a very, very warm world that we live in now, but there is still a fight back of winter to produce a minus 52 in northern China when the planet is as warm as it is pretty remarkable. And I think nature is almost competing against itself. We've got this warming backdrop of the planet, but we've also got the fight of winter still hanging on. And does a rubber band eventually snap and we go the other way? Does the Gulf Stream shut down and all of a sudden Europe in particular, but also North America, plunges back into a predominant cold period? Who knows? Another aspect to take into consideration is the fact that we're in a solar maximum. 11-year cycle. We did see the solar minimum back around the 2019. Looks as if solar maximum is going to occur earlier than what was expected. It also appears that solar cycle 25. Now this is out with my pay grade, if I want to use that term. Folks like Lisa Pattenden, Shryan Bruin, Richard Trott, other folks, and of course scientists out there know a heck of a lot more than I do, and I do apologize if I'm coming across ignorant by my lack of knowledge, so to speak. But this is solar minimum versus solar maximum, and the right hand disk is where we're at now. Big CMEs, big solar flares being released away from the surface of the sun. And is this affecting the planet as well? Of course, it has to be having some sort of impact, but I think the combination of El Nino, the warming of the planet overall, and the fact that we're in the solar maximum is likely producing what will be one of the warmest winters in UK, Ireland, Europe, North America, and even Northern Hemispheric history here. So, like I said, let me know in the comments section below what you think. I think I've rambled on way too long, but I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth with regards to where I think this winter has changed, the El Nino response, ocean to atmosphere, and other aspects also here. Looking at the latest 10 HPA extended range here, this is the mean zonal winds. Stronger the mean zonal wind, the stronger the polar vortex. The weaker the wind, the weaker the polar vortex. Looks as if we were borderline wind reversal back several days ago here. What impact is that going to have on the atmosphere into the month of March? That is the big question. But you notice here that we are seeing a slight recovery in the mean zonal winds surrounding the polar vortex, but it looks as if around about the 5th or 6th of March, we see a final sudden stratospheric warming taking place. Now, the final stratospheric warming traditionally is about the middle of April. This is over a month early. And like I said before, these stratospheric warmings tend to lead to enhanced blocking within the northern hemisphere. And I'm going to finally end, you'll be glad to know, by showing you the CFSV2 for the month of March in terms of the 500 millibar pattern here. So this is the month of March, and it is indicating a little bit of blocking here. We've got a negative up to the north of the UK. I wouldn't necessarily bet on a particularly cold March, but I think we will probably see a colder March than what we did February. And we'll wait and see what happens. But this, by the way, is where we were at. I did say that was going to close, and I promise I will. But you can see here, this is the period to start the month of December. I want to remind you that we have had some winter this year. Then we had the rotation into the phases of 4 and 5 here. We've seen a recovery. This was the month of December overall. Then as we skip through, if I can get to the right chart, this was the 5-day temperature anomaly during the middle portions of January. So we had the cold outbreak during the middle portions of January. As you can see, this is a period between the 9th and the 19th of January. So look at how cold it was compared to average here. Remember, I don't think the El Nino was responding to the ocean temperature anomalies at this stage. This is the front-running 19 days of January, by the way. And if we look at where we are, this is the 120-day temperature anomaly across Europe. So warmer than average across the UK overall. But look at Scotland. Average, even slightly below average temperatures for the last 120 days. This is the last 90 days, may I add. And you can see that it's a similar story. Look at Scandinavia. It stands out. If we look at the global picture here for the last 90 days, look at how warm the majority of the planet is. But look at Scandinavia. It really stands out like a sore thumb, doesn't it? Also Equatorial Africa and parts of China, particularly so southwestern China. But look at the Eurasia overall. Look at North America and look at the at South America here. That, I think, is a direct response to both the warmth in the equatorial Pacific as well as the Atlantic, I think, overwhelming the pattern here. So very interesting stuff. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll be back hopefully tomorrow with more. Bye for now.